create your presentation or you have a flow that enables you to go to the right solution, then you actually train your salespeople to do it the right way instead of turning into the product selling too fast.
Hello Sales Nation and welcome to the Salesman Podcast Live in partnership with HubSpot and recorded at the Sales Innovation Expo down in London. On today's show we have Morten Junge. He is the CEO of Prezentor and we're diving into how you can digitalize your B2B sales communication and the benefits of that. You can find out more about Morten over at Prezentor.com. Link to that and everything else in the show notes of this episode, as always, at salesmanpodcast.com. And with all that said, let's jump in to today's episode. Morten, welcome to the Salesman Podcast.
Thank you.
I'm excited to have you on. And so there's a whole wheelhouse of things that we can talk about today. But I want to focus on this initial question and then we'll see where we go with it. But how important is it for B2B sales professionals? Maybe it's not their responsibility, but we'll start with this. Whether for B2B sales professionals to be focused on the digitalization of their communication as opposed to doing what I used to do, which is get to my customer and dump a big product catalog in front of them and say, there you go, because I didn't have the tools or the resources. So how important is it for us to focus on the value we can add through things like your product?
I think the key point here is it's not important to focus on a digitalization, but on creating value to the client. And creating value comes through a dialogue. So as you said, presenting a catalog or even making a PowerPoint doesn't really make much sense. It's just boring. So digitalization has a lot to do with taking the advantage that you can do in creating a much more flexible presentation that allows you to have a dialogue with the client, and the presentation follows that dialogue instead of having an A to Z presentation or a catalog. So digitalization as such can help you a lot, but as a sales rep you shouldn't think about it.
And is this because we need to be more conscious of our prospects' time? So if we dump a catalog on them, we're almost sucking value from them because they've got to sit down and suss it out and work it out. And what I used to do, and I was half joking when I said that at the top of the show, but I would have the catalog and I'd put post-it notes in of here's the relevant thing, here's the relevant product, this is what you're looking at, and I'd scribble notes in. So I guess what we're trying to do is digitalize that and make it more seamless and obviously reduce the costs of printing these. With the catalogs we had, this full with 10,000 products that people only buy 4 of anyway.
Yeah, but you could put that catalog now in a digital form. That in itself would actually not change a lot. It'll save some printing costs, which is nice, but it's still just a catalog. I think you should aim at really thinking of this dialogue, trying to help creating a dialogue with the client. Normally you would either bring a catalog. Many do spend hours searching for material because they think cleverly enough about the clients and the meeting, so they want to prepare well. So they find material, they plug from different PowerPoints, they set something up, but the client might want to talk about something else, and you waste your time, and you have a lot of PowerPoints, you look confused. You know, it's just poor. Why don't you do it differently? And that can be done today using digital tools if done cleverly.
So is this we're not reliant and we're not hiding behind the software, the PDF, the document. We're using it as a prompt to engage in a conversation. We're almost using it as we're prodding someone with it and saying, let's talk about this.
Yeah, and the good thing about it is you can help sales sell better. You know, a lot of us, we like our products, so we sell products. We come into a meeting and we know we need to clarify the need and stuff like that. We like to sell products, so pretty soon we'll go into the product area. So, but in a presentation, if you can help to create a flow where you try to dive into the needs of the client, the challenges that they have, and led by that, you can create your presentation, or you have a flow that enables you to go to the right solution, then you actually train your salespeople to do it the right way instead of turning into the product selling too fast.
Okay, so super practically now.
Yeah.
So you just alluded to it there, and we all know that sales 101 is you don't sell features and benefits, you sell what it's useful to the prospect, how it's going to add value to them. You know, there's gap selling, there's value selling, there's all kind of acronyms to describe that process. How do we, in a presentation, how do we uncover what that gap is or what the value that we can add is, and then seamlessly walk them through a presentation that is bespoke to them to solve that problem? Because what most people do is they turn up with a PowerPoint deck, which is predefined, and clearly you can skip through slides if they're not relevant, but you certainly can't add any to it on the fly.
Yeah.
And then it looks perhaps like you're unprepared if you're going, well, not this one, not this slide, and you're kind of flopping and flopping in between the two.
Yeah. Well, what we have done is that we've started by thinking they want to prepare well, which they should in sales, but instead of making a new PowerPoint, they make an agenda. In that agenda, they can select any theme, any slides they want to plug in, so they can make a custom-made agenda with selected slides instead of making up a new presentation. Now, if the client then wants to talk about something else, they have that available anyway. And those presentations then should not only lead from a need and challenges into a solution, you should also enable them to make calculations so they can calculate, does it make sense to you? What is the payback time? What is return of investment? Do you save energy? So that is included in our tool that you can make those interactions with the client, really to get deeper. It's not to close the deal, but it's to find out, are we on the same track? Are we talking about the same thing? Thereby you can go much deeper than just in a first calls meeting where you try to find out and then you send an offer later on. So we want to get as far as possible in the first meeting.
So that we'll talk about your tool at the end of the show, perhaps.
Sorry.
But that is, don't apologise. It's a sales podcast.
No,
if you're not pitching, if you're not pitching, you're not doing something right. But something about your software that I really liked was the ability to have the sliders, to visualize the calculations. And my background in medical devices, it would be, perhaps we would want to stay under a certain threshold, so we didn't have to go to tender, so we could just close the business there and then. We've got the budget for it, and it was always I would sit there with a piece of paper, go through, well, you can have this camera system and these endoscopes and this, or you can have this and this and this. But if you could do that up on the board in front of you, there's a real, I guess it's intangible, but there's a real benefits to visualizing things and seeing it for your own eyes versus on, as you've got here, this piece of paper, this book with all the notes scribbled all over it.
Think about it. One of the clients we work with, our customers, is Ambu. They do a single device equipment for hospitals. Go in and have a discussion with a doctor, an aesthetician, and a purchasing manager there, and discuss whether they should go from complicated electronic devices to single-use devices. That's a complicated discussion. We call safety. We talk about cleaning. We talk about a lot. They have built all that calculations in here, so they can discuss all the assumptions and all the things in there to have a real discussion about whether to change from one to the other. That's a big complicated thing. But they should be able to take this discussion, and they can do that with our tool and maybe other tools as well.
And I guess from doing that, you've got the opportunity to reduce your buying cycle time as well.
That's it.
I think the word you used then was assumptions. Of if you come away from a meeting and you've got a list of assumptions, and then you're going to follow up with another email, that probably needs another meeting to go through the assumptions that you didn't get solved in the first time.
You lose momentum.
Yeah.
We all know how it is. If you're in a good conversation, you have them there, you know where they are, they know where you are, and you can make a plan together where you look into the numbers. You don't dilute into, you're there, we have the momentum. You use that and get as far as possible at all, and I think that makes a huge impact.
So let me ask you this. So we're going through the presentation. We've got your software in particular, but other software does similar things. We want to pivot our direction. We either see that the person's pulling out their phone and not really paying attention to us, or we know from the body language that what we've got on the screen or in front of them at the moment isn't relevant to them. What kind of questions should we be asking as we're going through the presentation to realign and reassess because we've made assumptions on what their priorities are before we've gone in there and before we put our deck together. What questions should we be asking to reaffirm what's important to them throughout the process?
Well, I hope that most people would start with going through the agenda, agree upon whether the agenda is correct.
So I don't. You're smiling as you say that. I think that's a step that's missed. I think an agenda is a step that's missed in a lot of sales meetings. Right, So perhaps I'll take it back a few steps. So we've got an email, we've got a meeting with the C-suite. We're super excited. Of course, we're not going to talk about the fact that most people prepare the night before or on the train on the way to the meeting. So we'll assume that we're prepared. We know what we want to talk about. Is the next step then to send them an email?
Hold on. You said what we want to talk about. There you killed it yourself.
So is the next step to send them an agenda of what we think is relevant and ask for feedback on that?
I think I like that. I like to send an agenda to make sure we are on the same page. Also to get a little bit maybe knowledge about who's actually participating. Maybe you can influence that. Maybe you can make sure that this guy that you really would like to see, that he joins in because you put in on the agenda a theme that is highly interested for him. So it can help you to take the stakeholder thing into your scene by making an agenda and aligning on that first. Yes, absolutely.
And I want to drill down to this. I think this is really valuable because there's going to be a whole lot of people listening now in both B2B sales at a low level and at a high value level that are going, I've never done this before. I really should be doing this. What should that agenda email look like? Is it literally bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, what you're going to get out of it? Or is it more refined and bespoke than that?
Well, I don't know the right answer for all of them, but in general, there should be a clear purpose why we're meeting, so everybody's aligned on that, and then the logical steps in the agenda, and don't make it too complicated. it's like bullet points where the subjects are set up, and maybe who is the lead on this topic, because it could be that you would like them to present something as well. It's not just your meeting, right? It's a meeting for both of you. So make an agenda, make it simple. It shouldn't be too complicated, but just to set the scene right, and also to give the chance to get some feedback before the meeting, because it might be you misunderstood, or it might be they want to invite somebody extra, or have a new topic. So it's really to clarify, just setting the scene right. But don't complicate it. It doesn't need to look fancy. It just needs to be on spot.
And I guess this, if we haven't already narrowed this down, this gives us the opportunity to ask maybe a more polite way of saying it, but is the decision maker going to be there? Can we get them there? And to identify that end decision maker so we can have a team group discussion. Yeah. So we send that, we've got a reply saying it looks fantastic, we've done that first step well. We rock up, we've got the presentation. It's not a weird bunch of PowerPoint slides that everyone's bored out of their brains with. But let's drill into that slightly from the presentation standpoint. What should be on the screen as we're presenting? Is it a Steve Jobs-esque, just a random white background with one image in it? Should it be a little bit of text? Should we only be using it when there's an opportunity to show, using a tool to show a calculation? How should we be framing up this presentation to have the most impact with the time that we've got with the decision makers? Yeah,
first of all, naturally, it's we try to advise clients to do less slides. First of all, we try to make them make them very visual. It's basics, but it's still needed to be said. We try to put them in layers so that you can click on things. So in one page, you might have 8 pages, because like if I want to present a page about us, I actually have one page. That's a page where I have some logos. If you click on the logos, you'll see some case films, but you don't need to click on the logos, and you can pick the one you like. So in one page, I actually have a lot of content, and you can build a lot of content and make it very visual on few pages. And then the most important thing is take it from the customer's perspective always, and before you enter into the solutions and calculations at the end of it. And maybe for what we see, even more important, when you then have finished the meeting, you are in good mood, you have found out everything, you clarified with the calculations maybe that we are on the right track, you know what to do, then at least in our system, we can very easily finalize the meeting with sending an email, do it right after the meeting, send a very specific email, use a template, but make it personal, select the specific slides where you felt this was it, these were the killer slides, or those you want to look at again. Then you can select those, you send them out, that's done right away. It's extremely professional, and it's out of your mindset. Otherwise, in sales, you might go to another meeting half an hour later, and another meeting 2 hours later, and you get messed up.
Yeah, of course.
Get it done, it's professional, and you get, in our system, you get feedback what the clients look into, which is a thrill. When you get a mail from our system, now this client looks into it, and what did they look into? You're just smiling even more, because you know what to do now. And if they don't look into it, you know they didn't look into it, which is also nice. You just know more about where your clients or your customers are looking.
Yeah, I guess you got then the feedback of, oh, they've looked at the page or the slide where we described the solution that we're going to give them 50 times, and they've looked at the page with the price twice. So clearly the solution is more important to them than the price in that context.
Exactly. I look every day in and see if there's some of the hot leads we have where I can see there's a lot of activity. I know I'm in a good mood, and it helps me a lot. And actually, I had a client, they looked at it, we had a meeting in August, they said, great, but the timing is wrong. Then suddenly in January, I got a mail from our system. They looked into it. I wrote a nice mail to them about how are things going. And then, by the way, what do you think about? And they say, wow, we just had a meeting this morning.
Yep.
And then maybe they looked at 3 other systems, but I knew where they were, and I took it professionally, and we had a meeting shortly after and got going from there. So it helps me to be relevant on the right time, because timing is also everything. You need to know when to pull the trigger and when to do stuff.
For sure, and because I can add a bit of context to this as well from my perspective of I use an email tracking tool, and it just gives me a little pop-up when someone opens the email. And I'll do the same thing. So with the partners that I work with to promote the show and to put on the show, if I don't get a response for my initial outreach, it might be, especially if we're dealing with startups or the smaller companies versus HubSpot or Salesforce that we kind of work with over the longer term. If a small company is sponsoring the show, it might be that they open the email 6 months later, I get this little ping, so I'll then proactively drop them an email saying, hey, like, not just checking in, there'll be context, there'll be an update on what we're doing, because a lot of them are bought into the entrepreneurial journey of the Salesman Podcast as well, being startup founders that I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
But that then you're almost enabling them to reply to you, aren't you? You're giving them a platform or opportunity to say, not for them to say, well, I ignored you for 6 months, and now I'm interested in speaking. You're giving them an opportunity to say, kind of like, hey, reply to your email and continue the conversation forward.
Yeah, I think for both parties it's really more efficient and a better way. You communicate when it's relevant, and if it's not relevant, you don't need to communicate. So this way you just follow up all the time, and keep chasing them. You still have to do some chasing, right? That's how it is in sales. But here you have a better chance to knowing when are they interested, when are they hot, and thereby be more respected, I think, if you are there when they need you.
Well, it turns you from the pest who's chasing you as a sales professional versus, chasing you as a salesperson versus the sales professional who is there to support you and help you grow your business and kind of support you along your business journey as an individual.
Exactly.
And with that, Morten, I've got one question that I ask everyone that comes on the show. Nothing to do with presentations, so I want to get your insights on this, and that is, if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give him to help him become better at selling?
Wow. Listening. Listening. It's the basic of dialogue is questioning and listening, and instead of selling. The word selling should be out. You should. Selling is often not selling, and that starts by listening and questioning and trying to understand what's happening. So being good at listening and learning how to listen. Be curious. Maybe be curious is a better word for this. Be curious. Be curious because you care, because you're interested, not because you want to sell. Sell will come if you take care and you're curious and interested in people.
Makes total sense. And with that, I want you to tell us a little bit about the product. We've kind of touched on it, and we'll link to it in the show notes as well. But tell the audience here more about the product and where we can find out more about you as well, personally.
Yeah, okay. So do I have 2 minutes or 10 minutes? Or
You've got about as long as it needs.
Yeah, okay. Now, well, let's start with this the scene setting here. That we see a lot of tools for marketing optimization. Every company is moving in that direction. We see things for sales like CRM systems growing better and better all the time. But we see only through 2 or 3 places where they really are into the engagement with sales and customers, what they do in the meetings, and we are one of them. And that is the missing link, I think, in the digital agenda, that we create a strong link between what's happening in the sales meeting, that's behavior, and the CRM system, which is more like reporting and managing. And we are there, and some others are there, and which is great. And now there are 2 ways of looking at this. And one is the content approach, which means that why don't we just take all content we have and make it digital on one platform, like an iPad, which is more convenient, and we know it's branded well and everything, and it's cool, it's great, it's good. It's just a first step, I think. We'd like to stay one step further, where we really look into the dialogue thing. Why don't we recreate or make something that sales can really do to have a great conversation with a client, which is then back to be curious and ask questions, have a dialogue, make a presentation and a flow that fits to that need, and then make a workflow that enables them to work smarter, like we talked a lot about the agenda. Make a proper agenda, and that makes the whole world much, much easier. then the presentation, then follow up, use the technology, make a brilliant follow up where you know exactly what they look into afterwards. It's so simple and smart and able to do in our tools and maybe some other tools as well. So what we see is our tool is used by companies where they have maybe 50, maybe 20, maybe 250 sales reps around the world. They want some kind of control. Our focus is make something people like to use, because then they use it, and then you get a lot of benefit, like brand control and sales management, know what they use and stuff like that. So many companies buy it because they like control. We try to make it so that sales use them because they all benefit. Some smaller clients, they buy it because they like the tracking. They like to send out things, and they like to know, do the clients open this, and then they can react on it. So the bigger clients, it's a lot like we don't want to give them the best tool available to make them even more professional and get tracking and all that stuff. The smaller clients are more like for tracking what the customers look into.
Yeah. Makes total sense. Well, we'll link to Prezentor in the show notes to this episode over at salesmanpodcast.com. And with that, Morten, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for joining us on the show.
Thanks for inviting me.
You're
Thanks
welcome.
a lot.